if I want to vote on that today. I want to.
So we can do it at the next.
I would like to talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Do we
you
have a
say-
flag in here? I see it right behind me.
I know, we don't have to go search for that.
Okay, it's 8:59.
Good, good.
Our last meeting, they had to come pick the
What, I
flag
just
to
hit
bring
the
it to
table?
Yeah.
auditorium. Oh, God, coffee.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the special call meeting of January 6, 2021. Roll call, please.
Ms. Tynes,
Here.
Ms. Hulick. Here. Ms. Carr,
Here.
Ms. Perkins,
Here.
Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is approval of agenda or amendments.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and it has been seconded.
Ms. Tynes,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, motion was passed. At this time, I want to welcome everyone to our meeting, and I would like to ask Ms. Perkins, our Vice Chair, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance in the moment of silence.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we're going to hear a report from the superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board members.
School's in session.
Okay. So I'm going to first give you a little background information where we are with the construction manager at risk process. And I have handed you guys the scoring rubrics that the committee went over. So the committee met Monday to score each submission, and we had 7 companies submit proposals. The committee was comprised of Dick Rice on the Board of Supervisors, Tom Durg, who's on the Planning Commission, Steve Kepnes, who's our Finance Executive Director, Chris Coleman, who's our Executive Director of Facilities, Susan Getz, who's Executive Director of Leadership, and I've gone through similar processes in the past. Vicki Ulick was our school board representative, and myself. And so we spent quite a lot of time going through some very thick proposals, and then we met as a group on Monday to score them collectively. And just so you know that in the RFQ, the evaluation of experience and the rubric, you had to score 75 points or higher to go to the next round, which is the technical proposals. And I just wanted to share how that rubric looks. So the one that's in front of you, the specific construction experience. So you didn't need CMAR. It would be nice if you had CMAR experience, but we didn't make it that you only had to have that. That if you had significant school experience, similar elementary experience in the last 10 years, so we kind of rated it on all those factors. And then the next category for 20 points was the reference checks for those projects. So calling the companies, Mr. Coleman did all of that work, calling those the school systems to see how they did on those projects. The next category was the specific project team responses. So those were the the team members who are going to be assigned to our school project. And so they had to show us who was going to be the project manager, who's going to be the executive in the project, et cetera, and what were their experiences with elementary schools of similar size and CMAR, et cetera. And then again, a reference check on those individuals. And then the next categories were the project methods, which consisted of experience with the maximum price, value engineering, all those initiatives, cost management, maintaining the schedule. Are you going to be on time with the project? Quality control responses. They had to show a quality control, an actual quality control submission from one of their former projects, and a safety program from one of their former projects. So it's an extensive process, and after going through that, of the 7, 4 have been scored to meet the criteria to move forward, and those 4 were SB Ballard. They're a local company, done a lot of work in the Virginia Beach area, Hampton Roads area, and have done some work with RRMM. MB Con / Heartland. So they are joining together. MB Con is a national firm out of South Carolina. They also have offices in North Carolina and Virginia and have extensive experience with construction management. And Heartland is actually the company that built the prototype that we're building. And they have built that several times. So a lot of experience there and in the local area with Heartland. Then WM Jordan, they are a very large local firm, and they scored very well as well. And then Cambridge Construction, they've done a lot of work in Richmond. They've done a lot of school projects and have done several jobs with RRMM. So those are the 4 that scored above 75 and that we would like to see on the short list and move forward to technical proposals, which technical proposals are due January 15th. And then we will have interviews with those firms on January 20th. And then we would be back to the school board again, picking our #1 firm to move forward with. And that firm, we would try to work out the guaranteed maximum price. And if for some reason we can't get there with that firm, then you can move back to the second-rated firm at that point. So that's kind of where we are with the process, and we do need a vote on that,
Okay.
if you have any questions.
I have a question, Dr. Thornton. So what you, after summing up everything you said, the board is to look over these, will choose the top 4 and vote on the top 4 for you to go forward.
Well, the committee has
to go
scored
forward,
them.
right.
And only those top 4 meet the requirements to move forward. So
So,
the board would have to vote to move those 4 forward.
right,
And at this time, it doesn't matter where they're ranked, because
it's there.
they have to submit again a technical proposal and go through interviews.
Okay, all right. Madam
We need a
Chair,
motion. Mhm.
You need a motion?
Yes, we need the
I was
motion.
gonna do a
Madam Chair, I move that the SB Ballard, MB Con, WM Jordan, and Cambridge Construction move forward to the shortlist phase of the CMAR project or process, and that we request technical proposals from each of these firms due on January 15, 2021.
second.
Okay, we have a motion and it has been seconded.
Ms. Tynes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion passed. Next on our agenda is adjustment plat Hardy School site.
Yes, Madam Chair and board members, in your packet is a plat from the Hardy site. And if you look at it on the far right, part of that plat was the land that was acquired by the county. And so they need to transfer that 7.91 acres to Isle of Wight County so that we can have that land for the project. That was very important to the project as far as because the existing building will remain during construction. So where the new building will be located, also where to house materials during construction, and I believe in that area too is where they're going to have the water tower, I believe. And so that land was important to the project. And what we need is to authorize the chair to execute these documents. So as the county executes their documents, they'll be sending them to us, and we need the chair's signature to move forward. But the board would have to vote to give Ms. Carr authorization to sign those documents moving forward. And the Board of Supervisors already did this. They've given Mr. Acree that authority for the Board of Supervisors.
Okay,
Madam Chair, I make a motion for the Hardy School land plat to authorize the chair to execute all appropriate documents, including the plat entitled Subdivision Plat for Isle of Wight County, dated August 19th, 2020, to facilitate the transfer of 7.9 acres from Isle of Wight County to the Isle of Wight County School Board for construction of the new Hardy Elementary School.
Second.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and it has been seconded.
Yeah.
Ms. Tynes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that motion passed. And at this time, we have the budget update from the superintendent.
Yes, so Madam Chair and board members, I want to go to the first slide, which says information since the last meeting. So since our last board meeting and the discussion and some of the concerns, some of the things that have happened since then will help make decisions. So one was the governor's budget came in and there was a line item for hold harmless money. And Steve could give us the exact numbers if you want those, but we actually are going to receive additional state money based on our ADM in the budget. And Steve, is that, it's close to $1 million, is that? So that is good news from the state that they're holding harmless, because many divisions such as ours that have lost 200 students or more, and some of the bigger divisions who have lost like 2,000 students, we don't know how many of those are going to stay in private schools or stay homeschooled, or may take virtual Virginia for different options or some other virtual school. So it's really important that they hold us harmless, and in the budget, they're holding us harmless this year and in next year's budget, which is why the additional money, and that is very important for our budget moving forward. And of course, this is a governor's budget, and we'll still have the House and Senate, but from what we're hearing from those individuals, this seems pretty solid that they are protecting K-12 education through this pandemic, which is very good news from all parties. Next is the additional CARES funding. So we do not have exact numbers on this yet, but I'm sure some of you have heard in the news, they have passed some additional money. Some of it is money to go to individuals. There was a large pocket of money that goes to K-12 education. I don't have the exact numbers, but they're saying that it's more than we received the last time. So that's good news as well. to help us fund positions that we may need for remediation over the next 2 years to catch up our children, but will not be ongoing positions. So that may be a very good source of money to really help us catch our kids up. And I really think we'll need those positions for 2 years, and the way it's sounding is that they're going to give us time to spend that money. And once I have the full details, they just haven't been sent to the state yet. And the schools themselves and the departments, they did not request much this year, knowing all the unknowns. And I'll show you later in the presentation, we can meet the majority of these requests now due to those first 2 bullets, and from the school and special education. And you know, special education is driven by numbers, and some of those we're gonna have to have. Some were like right on the edge, so we feel like we ought to budget for them up front and get those people here. Next is we will not have to cut positions to fund this. Initially, when I talked to each one of you individually, I was looking at, we might have to cut some positions and to make this happen. And now we're not in that position because of again, the good news in the first 2 bullets from the state and federal government. We may still cut some positions, but we do that every budget cycle based on needs. So I don't want to say we're not going to cut any position, and then later in February I present my budget and we're cutting a position. The normal process is still going to work. And then the salary study, and I know several of you asked, where are we with all of our categories? And so our salary study was conducted about 3 years ago to ensure that our 5-year plan was on target to get all employee categories competitive in the region. And we know our region is not, we have Little Franklin City, we're not that large, and then we have our larger systems. But that's who we compete against for jobs. We know we can't be at a Virginia Beach level, Newport News, but we want to be in that middle so that we stay competitive. And so that was our 5-year goal. I've shared this every year at the budget. And so we have also re-examined all of these categories in the region again, and did a lot of phone calls and a lot of work to get that information to you. Any questions on that?
Yes,
Yes,
Dr.
ma'am.
Thornton, I was looking over this, and if we approve this proposal that you have here for Isle of Wight County bus drivers, is like 14.50. If I'm correct, the new minimum wage will be $15. So we're only going to be about 50 cents from the minimum wage anyway?
Yeah, we're not on that slide yet, but that's a good question. But they do not work 8-hour days.
Okay.
So, right.
So
that
this
would
is
be-
like part-time?
Right.
Okay.
And Cheryl, do you have anything you can add to that, or?
So,
Because that's not going to be immediate, is it? It's right. So we'll research some of that too. The
No, I was
$15 an
just
hour.
thinking that we have, if we're only gonna be like 50 cents from that minimum wage, at least we are trying to reach that goal, so maybe next year we could actually reach it.
Right. Right.
so this is all about the budget, and I know next we're talking about the increases for all. Are you looking at doing the increase for all and an increase in this budget? I'm just trying to get my head around that as I'm looking at the information.
No. So right now and again we haven't finished our budget for next year, but right now we are looking at doing this increase now, and that increase will carry into next year's budget. That's the key question: can we pay for that? And the answer is yes. Are we looking at another increase? The answer is no. And so this increase, though, will put money in their pockets 6 months ahead of time and carry through next year,
Okay.
which is a very positive.
So we're not
And-
looking at an increase now and then an increase in July when the budget gets done?
No,
You're not gonna see an increase in that budget?
no, except for possibly teachers, because there's a provision in the governor's budget
Yeah.
to give them a bonus. And Now, you could give them a bonus, or you can give them their step, however you want to do it as a county. I'm going to recommend the step, because a bonus doesn't help them with the VRS.
Right.
And doesn't keep them on track. And the step increase for a teacher is basically a 2% cost of living increase every year. So that's all that is. So at this point, I'm saying no, based on the money and the revenue we're seeing, we would not be able to afford that.
And we would be able to keep their HSA accounts intact as well. We're not going to be touching that again.
Right, we shouldn't, based on what we're hearing, we shouldn't have to, we normally hold monies because you're never positive in Virginia if you're going to get all the money because of their caboose bill, et cetera. But no, we're not going to freeze the $600 HSA. Okay. They're going to get that up front like they have in the past.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
But we did reduce that in last year's budget to $600. Moving forward, as part of our plan to reduce it, we're not going lower than 600, but we did freeze even that 600 this year that you guys released at the last meeting. So it will stay at 600 and it will not be frozen.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so next I just wanted to share priority 6 of the strategic plan, and that's what I was talking about. Of the 5-year plan, our goal was that we must recruit, select, induct, develop, support, promote, compensate, and retain the quality people we have, and to keep Isle of Wight as really one of the best school systems in the region and state. And so that is in our goals. We're going to be talking about later this year. We have to do a new comprehensive 5-year plan, and I don't think that's ever probably going to leave our sight, but I just wanted to remind the board of that priority. And we have to be competitive in the region. And once we are competitive, you're going to hear me talk about COLA a lot, which is the cost of living adjustment. I probably should have used that word last month, because when you talk about 2% or less, you're really just talking about a cost of living increase. You're not talking about a raise. So as we move forward, I'm going to try to focus on, when I talk about a group of individuals that's behind, then those individuals will need a raise on top of their COLA.
Cost of living.
Others that are competitive, they're not going to get a raise, but we need to keep them moving so they continue to be able to pay their insurance, et cetera. So the 5-year plan, we have presented this every year, and the goal was to ensure to stay competitive. And then once we got competitive, we want to offer a minimum of a cost of living adjustment every year to all our employees. Is that going to be possible every year? The answer is no. Vicki asked a very good question. So if we give the cost of living increase now, are they going to get a cost of living increase in July? The answer in the forecast for this revenue is no, except again for the teacher bonus. So are you always going to be able to give a cost of living increase? No, because it's driven by revenues. Now, we could ask for additional money from the locality to do things like that, but so I just wanted to make that clear. Just because we want to do that doesn't mean it's a necessity. Next, I put in there, just to get people familiar with a cost of living adjustment, or the word COLA. This is the only place you're going to see the word raise in that first bullet. It's a raise you get in order to cover the rising cost of living. But the word itself is cost of living adjustment. It's to move you along that. It's intended to keep the buying power of an employee's salary the same. Without a cost of living adjustment, the declining value of the dollar would leave workers with less money in their pocket.
That's true.
So the good thing of our 5-year plan was fixing those salary scales, which was expensive, but in between those years, people haven't been getting a cost of living. So if we fixed you 2 years ago or 3 years ago, then you have less money in your pocket over the last 2 years. And so that was the bad thing about fixing it that way. but it was the only way because some of those scales were so far off, as you guys know. And regular adjustments, they do encourage people to come to your division. If they see that you're trying to give a COLA every year and keep moving people and teachers a step every year, people are encouraged by that. So next, I really wanted to go over kind of the history of that 5-year plan and where we were. On the bottom, I put a little note. In 15-16 was a teacher raise. And then if you look at the 4 years I have up there, the teachers received a step, which is a COLA, basically. It's an average 2%. And on our scale right now, it's not 2% for everyone. It's close. And that was one of our goals, to try to get that in between each step. And then you basically see everyone got a 2% raise in 16-17. And then in 17-18, we had gotten the information from Cheryl and the study we did in the region, and we started doing our fixes. And so 17-18 was a teacher raise, and I put raise there because that was anywhere from 2 to 7%. So that was more than a COLA. The bus aides did not get a raise, I think, for some reason in 16-17, I'm not sure, and they were further behind. And when we researched them, their fix brought them up by 12.5%. And the nurses were fixed. And so when I use the word fix, I want to say this. So I know some of you went through this process. A fix meant people were hired way up here and were offered that, even though someone here who had the same experience or more, they came in at a different time period, so they were only offered this much money.
Yeah.
So the fix created some people actually getting no increase during the fix, and some people 2%, some people 12%. So in every one of these categories, whether it was the nurse, secretaries, whatever, there were some sizable jumps for individuals, administration as well. But in every one of those categories, there were individuals who received nothing. Very few people who received nothing, but there were several people who got basically a COLA, 2%. So the nurses were fixed that year. The following year, the nurses received an additional 5%, but that's because we reclassified them to exempt, correct, Cheryl? Yes. And so to meet the requirement for the pay, we had to move them another 5% to make them an exempt employee. And 18-19 was the year we jumped IAs to 10%. So you see the starting salary went from $11.41 an hour to $12.55 per hour. And I do want to point out, IAs actually get paid for 8 hours and 200 days, and they work 7.5 hours, the full-time aides. So there's a little benefit in there for them as well. And that was the year that I know I met with bus drivers, and we did a lot of meetings with the bus drivers, and we moved them up 10%, and I put 10% minimum there. If you look at the starting rate, $11.85 to $13.05, that was a 10% jump, but we applied that as 10% across the board. So if you were making $11.85, you got a 10% raise. If you were making $18.85, you got 10% of that. So you got more than 10%. You probably got 14%. And so that's like any category. For longevity and you make more money, you're going to make a little higher percentage on the increases, if that makes sense.
I have a question back to the IAs.
When
you say they work 8-hour days or 8 hours, they work 7.5, but they're paid for an 8-hour day, and they're paid for 200 days. All right, the question that Denise had earlier about the minimum wage, and you said that you're talking about like the full hour, because we have assistants that work full hours a day.
Yes.
And others that are full-time.
Full-time.
So is there a distinction in the pay between those considered part-time and full-time?
No, they're paid by that hourly rate.
Okay.
And then in 18-19, in February of that fiscal year, which was 19, we did the admin fix. And again, that was a fix, so it varied greatly. In 19-20, for teachers, the steps were fixed in February. So again, the budget that year, if you remember, was iffy. So we didn't give them the increase at the start, but we did give it to them in February. And when it says steps fixed, we had a group of teachers. It was not a large group, but we had a group of teachers that, because of budget freezes, long time ago, may have been 5 steps off, 8 steps off, 2 steps off. It was variety for the year's experience. They weren't given the year's experience that they deserved. So we moved them to their actual year's experience on the scale. And so that was done at that time as well. So all teachers are at the step they need to be at for their experience. And that year as well, we did the secretary fix. And we did bus aides again at 3%, and we made sure, because I told you, I don't think the bus aides got that raise in 16, 17. And so we made sure when the drivers get something, the aides are with them. And then we did the technology fix, and those are the technicians.
I have a question. So we gave the IAs a 10% increase, but have we fixed their scale?
So there were still people that need to be fixed, and I know Cheryl was reaching out and telling them to contact her, and to, because some of them that think they're on the wrong step are not on the wrong step. So that really is an individual HR thing. They need to go in and go through if they were somewhere else and show that, and then we can adjust that. And we can adjust them, and we have adjusted people in different categories as we find out. And you guys have seen that in some of our personnel agendas as we find those things. So
Are we able to proactively look to see who's on wrong steps? Because someone may not realize they're on the wrong step. They don't know.
Cheryl, can you speak to that at all? You might want to come up here, though.
Sorry, I'm not trying to.
No, it's a good question, because we want to make sure.
Because, you may not know what step you're supposed to be on, or you may not be aware.
We have started that process. We actually keep a roster in HR of the years each person has. And then what we have done now is when we make offers for IAs, we have a formula that we use, so that now we're being consistent. So anybody that we're hiring, we're using a consistent formula. So we do have a record. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how many people are off a little bit, but we have asked people to contact us individually, but we do have that information, and so it's just a matter of we can get back to it. And
Shouldn't we be, if we know who's off, shouldn't we just be fixing it for them? Like, why do they need to contact us? It's our mistake.
well, that's what I'm saying. We've started the process. I mean, I have a list of their years of experience. We haven't actually sat down and said, oh, this person probably needs to be, so it's something we can do. And
I would like to see that done, because I don't think, if it's our mistake, they shouldn't be responsible for contacting us, because they may not realize there's a mistake. But if we're talking about being fair and proactive about pay, it's important that we're understood to be fair and proactive, that we are actually looking into issues and solving them. I'm not knocking anything you're doing.
Right, no.
I understand there's a lot of work, especially this year, but I'm saying I feel like that's somewhere we need to go to make sure they are on the right scale as well, before we start putting raises in there, making the differences worse. You know what I mean?
And when you look at, when we put the list and we look at their years and we put them in order by their years, there really are not a whole lot of people that are, it's not like it's a huge mass fix that we'd have to do, but we do probably need to look at each person individually, and it could be a couple $100.
Yeah, because we want to be fair to all our employees. We don't want anyone to be shortchanged for their experience.
Right. We'll look at that, but we also want to, when we say contact HR, is there are people in all categories through the years who have said, well, I worked over here as a secretary or something, does that count? And then that's where they have to come in and show where they worked, and if it meets the requirements, we can give them years for that.
And I understand
Right,
that, but I'm
right.
saying if we have a record of years they've worked, at least for us or within the
Right.
state of Virginia, we should be proactively applying that to them just as we would the teacher. Everyone should be on that same formula. There should be no one that works for us that doesn't have that formula applied.
And I think that's what we found, because we go back and look at their original application or original resume, and if they didn't put the information on the original application, we don't know.
Right, no,
And so-
and I understand
so
that.
that's why there may be some discrepancies, and that's why we want people, if they
No.
feel like they're really off.
But based on the
let us-
information we have, we should be correct because we have a formula, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'm not knocking you, I know it's a lot
Right.
of work, I'm
Right.
not saying it isn't, but I just feel
Right.
like that's a step in the direction we need to
Right.
go for equity within our,
Right.
field.
And I just want to clarify, I know what you mean. I just want to clarify, though, it's not a mistake on our fault. It was when they were hired, that was the process.
Right, but if we're, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
don't mean to no, but if we're looking at 2%, all that does is magnify a problem if it hasn't been corrected.
Right.
And
So
then it
we
makes a
can-
bigger problem down the road.
Right, so we can fix that within what I'll propose at the end of this. We can do that fix as we do this.
Is that something that could be in I just want it
Yeah.
accounted for monetarily,
Uh-huh.
either in the budget going forward. We have formulas for most of our positions, and I would like to make sure all of our staff has that formula applied to their pay. That way, when we're giving these COLAs or we're giving these raises, there's equity among that. Because it's very frustrating for some people to feel they're behind and, or whether they are or aren't, I don't have privy to that. But, and then get a 2%, but then they're still behind because their money's not applied to a formula. So I just want to make sure that we're doing that equitably among all levels that we have and keep our discrepancies lower. That's all.
Right.
It's not a knock on anybody. I know it's a lot of work to go through every person we
Oh,
have
yeah.
and make sure they're proper, but I feel like that's something we need to do to make sure that we're paying people appropriately. And that may just be me, but I just,
No,
Yeah.
we can make that adjustment.
okay. I just want that, if we could think about that when we're moving forward with the budget as well for next year, because that's gonna cost money. You
Mhm.
know, I don't know how much, because I don't know
Yeah.
what is off.
Like Ms. Elliott said, I don't think we have significant people, so I don't think it's gonna alter our plan and say, oh, we can't do that.
Okay,
So,
no, that's fine, but
yeah.
I just want it accounted for when we're going forward.
Okay, very good. And so that brings us to this fiscal year, 2021. And of course, because of the pandemic and we had no idea of loss of enrollment, sales tax, all the factors that we went into this year blind, and we had to hold a lot of money. And so we gave no increase for any group. We held the HSA, which we've now released. So that's kind of like the 5-year history of where we are. So I'm going to go over the categories now to see, are we still competitive from 3 years ago, and what my recommendation would be for an increase.
Okay.
So the first category is the bus driver pay. And so that was interesting to see, because when we did this 3 years ago, we were ahead of Suffolk and in the middle. And now you see everyone keeps moving. So that's why you have to keep looking at this. And HR, you probably need to look at this every 2 years. And that will inform the board and inform my team of when we need to give a COLA versus a COLA plus a raise. So you see, we are actually with the last 3% raise, we went from that $13.05 to $13.50 an hour starting. But we're behind those others. So I'm proposing a $1 an hour increase, which is a 7.4% increase, and move our starting pay to $14.50. Now that's not going to move us on this list, but then we're right next to Suffolk, Virginia Beach. We're competitive. The goal is really, are you competitive? Then we are very competitive again. So that will be one of my recommendations at the end, to move bus drivers a $1 an hour increase across the board.
And this is for the budget, right?
This would be for January,
Oh,
which would
January.
go into next year. All the proposals I'm making would be for January. That would go into next year. And then I wouldn't be proposing another increase for bus drivers in July. But by doing it now, if we can afford it, we're giving them that increase. Instead of starting in July, we're giving them 6 months more of that increase.
And this moves everyone on that bus driver scale?
Everyone $1.
Okay, and, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think how I want to phrase it. And then so, what is the monetary amount of doing that, total?
Do you have the individual breakdowns?
Not like for individual people, but the
No,
total amount of money
for the
it costs for bus
category, right.
drivers. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my head around how much money everything's costing, and $14.50 doesn't do me good budgetary wise. Yes, please.
Mhm.
Over a year's time, it would be about 67,000, but from January to June, it would be about 40,000.
So you're saying it's 40K if we were to go forward this now in this budget, and 67 in the next budget? And that
Right.
would be reflected in your budget when it's presented
Right.
in January as a sunk cost at that point?
Right, and so all these increases that Steve can share, we've already calculated those increases against that new revenue from the governor's budget and other revenue, the CARES funding, et cetera.
Okay, but that money's not solid yet, right? Because it still has to go through the Senate and the House, like, it has to still go through the delegates and the senators.
It does, but what we're hearing from all of those parties is they are gonna hold K-12 harmless.
Okay, and then the CARES money,
And the
has
CARES
that been
money's
approved?
already been sent to the states. It just hasn't been allocated to counties yet.
I just don't want to count my chickens before they're hatched.
Yeah.
I'm sure they don't need them.
Yeah, no, I know you don't either. There's nobody who wants to be short a chicken.
Right.
They're in the
I
hatchery,
don't
so.
want to get ahead of us, but as I'm developing the budget with the new state aid that just came in, the budget for next year is in a very good place in terms of revenue compared to what we need to spend.
Okay. Like, what difference are you seeing?
In the realms of a $500,000.
Okay.
So after we go through this and we show you what stays in the budget and these increases, we're looking at still having approximately $500,000 to maybe fund something else.
So
We're being
after the
cautious.
raises, you're looking at $500,000?
No. That's additional money we'll have after the raises, after the positions, to still, I don't want to say play with, but it's
To
not
utilize
accounted
appropriately
for.
within the school system?
Right, it's not accounted for, but we're being careful with that because mainly, I'll tell you, special ed. And we have some requests for special ed, and we still have to go through that budget process for them, but we're very comfortable that that money will take care of any special ed needs we have and still have some money. So we feel like we're in a very comfortable position.
And is that also with the remediation? We know we're going to need additional remediation people in our elementary schools more specifically?
And that's in here too.
That's in here, or is it in the budget for?
It's in the presentation, so
Okay.
we'll get to that.
Sorry, I
You're good.
didn't
No.
read ahead.
I know.
apologize.
All right, I have a question. With the proposing $1 an hour increase for the bus drivers, that would be the increase including COLA? So they wouldn't get this and COLA, it would just be
No, that's including
this?
COLA.
Okay,
So their COLA plus a raise is $1.
gotcha.
Yep, very good. Good question. Okay, so next, we looked at the IAs, Instructional Assistant Pay, and I showed this to you at the last meeting with the 1255, and the proposal at that time would have moved them up in the middle. And I do understand the concerns in that category. So as we looked at that more closely and looked at our revenue, we're proposing an increase of $1 an hour increase for them as well, which would move them from $12.55 currently starting pay to $13.55, which is a 7.9% increase. And so I actually put them in two places there, so you see where we are currently, and you see we jump a little above the middle. We jump very competitive now for the IAs at this point with that increase.
And total cost for this budget and next budget?
Steve, you might as well stay up there.
I'm sorry, I mean, like,
No,
I'm
that's a
trying
good
to get my
question.
head around some of these numbers and just understand what we're, and where's this money coming from for this year's budget? Just to be clear.
From a lot of unfilled positions, due to the COVID and the issues we've had, due to some of the money that we froze. And so that money is readily available. And we will still have money, we still have money in reserve. And I'm being conservative with that money too, knowing that we have Hardy. I know we gave back $1.4 million last year's budget that we saved due to the pandemic. And that money is being held by the county, hopefully to offset architectural fees. I think the architect costs about $1.7 million. So that almost paid for the architect. So if we can have some good savings here, then I would be coming to you saying, we need to give that money back and be good stewards since we have capital projects that we need.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay. But at the same time, with that money, we have people who have worked very, very hard that, again, my goal is get them the money now, 6 months early, and carry through next year. So that's the goal. So Steve, what was the cost of that?
So I didn't break out just the IAs, but my total support for the 10-month support positions over a year's time would be $69 million. So from January to June is about
69,000, you mean?
I'm sorry.
I was like, my God.
That's our whole budget.
I was like, geez. I'm like, that's not.
Never mind, we're not sound.
I was like, woo.
We needed a laugh.
Just glad
We
that's
did.
not a
Thank you.
COVID symptom.
I had a small heart attack.
And over January to June, 41,000.
Okay, that's much better numbers. I almost think you did that to like shock me into seeing those numbers is really good.
Be careful what you ask for, Vicki.
Oh.
Okay, so next is the Administrative Associate Secretary pay comparison. And as you can see there, we are very competitive in the region. And so the fact that we are that competitive, I'm proposing the COLA increase.
And was this in that 10-month one or,
Yeah, they're mixed with support.
okay,
Yes.
so have we received the amount this cost already with that 10-month employee? Or is this a different one?
Well, depending on their classification, I would have to work with Cheryl to break them out, but some of them would be in the administrative group and some of them would be in the support group. So within the support, yes, the 69,000 would account for many of them. And then in the administrative group, there's an increase from January to June that I think I don't want to get ahead of your presentation, but would be
Oh, that's fine.
73,000.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how we have to report things out and how we run the numbers is a little different. So like in administration, you have nurses and you have other health positions in there. Some of those secretary positions are in there. So the way he's calculating it, there is some crossover.
Now, so I'm just trying to get like numbers. For this budget, what is the total increase that we would be spending on for all raises? Not, because the teacher ones we already approved, but this is for everybody else that isn't a teacher. In this budget, and then what we're looking at for next year's budget.
For this budget from January to June, and this is inclusive of the teachers, is $450,000.
Do you have something that's exclusive of the teachers, just so I can have a,
The teachers, I have $319,000.
for the teachers?
Yes. So the
That's good, I can do
balance,
that math.
right, would be what, 130,000?
Okay.
Approximately, for everybody else.
And then would I double that for next year?
It's a little more than double the way,
well,
because of benefits
Yeah,
and
that
the increase.
450 is from January to June, 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
But many of those categories are only 10-month positions, so no, you wouldn't double it. Because the teachers are only 4 months, September to December. So So my total is 780,000, because I started with an annual increase for all of these, and then I just took 6 months of that.
Okay, and that's just for the raises, that's pretty much the raises, or is that the full salaries? That's just the raises, correct? For the next budget?
That's the increase. Oh,
The
yeah,
increase,
yeah,
yes.
the full salaries is in the $30 million.
Right, no, I know,
Yes,
that's.
And that's not a typo, 30 million, yeah.
Yes, no, half our budget is salaries, I totally understand that.
That's just the increase.
Okay, so the increase for next budget would be 780K,
Approximately, yes.
and you're thinking we're gonna see 500K over this as revenue?
What he said.
Yes.
Is that sustainable long-term after this pandemic is over?
Yes. The only thing that you'll see later is the remediation positions that will be paid through federal dollars that will not be sustainable. And we're planning for those for 2 years.
Are those remediation positions planned in this raise, because we would still have to pay them at?
Oh, yeah, they'll still be paid under that, yes. But they'd be paid through grant funds, so it doesn't affect your local budget.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to organize the information about it. Now, we wouldn't be, after the grant funds are out, we wouldn't be getting rid of all positions in that field, just some, correct?
Right, just the ones that we funded through the grants. Now, as we go through that 2 years, if we find, oh, we need to keep 1 or 2 of them, depending where we are, then we may, and then that would be a budget initiative in the regular local budget at that point.
Okay,
So,
thank you. Sorry.
okay, so next is teacher salaries, where do we rank? I do want to say, before I say where do we rank, this was FY19. We get these from VA, we get these rankings, and they rank all divisions at step 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. So it gives you an idea where you are in the region, where you are in the state, but this is old data. So if you look at this, back then there were, I think it should say 16 school divisions in our region, and where we rank. So you see step 0 and 5 in the region, not that competitive, but the rest of the steps very competitive in the region. If you look in the state, there's 134 school divisions, so even at step 0 and 5, we're very competitive. We're in the top half. So statewide, we are in a great position with our teacher scale. Now, I did put those notes on the bottom. So in this year, when they did this comparison, our starting salary was $41,310, and we have now increased it based on last month, now to $44,500. So that was a good increase, and step 5 went up to $46,152. Those are increases of 7.7 and 7.4% since then. So I'm going to guess that our ranking went up some. I don't think significantly, because teachers were getting raises in other divisions too. You know, the governor always puts some kind of appropriation for teachers. So I do think we probably got more competitive though in 0 to 5. And once we get that new report, if it comes out, we'll share that with you. I also wanted to show at step 20 and 30. So you see at step 20, which is more in the middle, that increase that we've gotten by moving the scale some is only a 2.6% increase, but the top moved to 10%. And the reason the top has been moved, when I got here, we were frozen at step 30. And we have teachers who have taught 40 years. Do we still have 40-year people? I know we did when I came. And so they weren't getting all of that money. And we started, I think it's 3 years ago now, putting step 31, 32, 33, and what Steve and I discussed is we probably are going to cap it at 35 in the future, but with a caveat that says anyone past 35 would get a stipend of X number of dollars, so that you can't, so you don't have to just keep moving the scale up. So, but by doing that, we have increased those top teachers who are our top veterans and some great teachers, they've been receiving some good increases over the last couple of years. And before I leave that, I know Ms. Tynes has said several times publicly that she would like to see us move the starting teacher pay to $50,000. And right now we're at the $44,500. And I am going to work with Steve to draft a 3-year plan and what that would cost, to give you guys an idea of what that would cost. I ran some numbers. I'm a math and finance guy too. Some numbers with our current staff. And to move us right now, if we jumped our scale from 44.5 to 50,000, that doesn't seem like a lot of money, but then you still have to account for a COLA in between each step. So it moves the whole scale, which is great, because it should. But the cost of doing that in a one-time jump is $3.9 million without benefits and $4.9 million with benefits.
Ooh.
And you have to give them benefits. So basically $5 million to pull that off. And I don't know if you can go out to the citizens and say we need $5 million. Good luck with that. But I do think you have to plan, though. And I've said that the state needs to plan to help us. So somewhere between where we're pushing the state legislation to move and our locality, maybe we can incrementally get there. And I did do a quick breakdown of if we jumped to 46.5 and then to 48 and then to 50, that first jump would still cost, with benefits, $2 million. The next jump would be $1 million, and the last jump would be $2 million. So it's still significant to get there, but I do think if that is our goal, we have to have a plan to get there and know what it costs. So the next was the administrative rankings, and this was from the studies that Cheryl did. Now their information is not readily available in VEA. We have to call and go get those salaries from our area division. So when that study came out, we got some of these. You see, we got 7 divisions would give us the information, 8 divisions, 10. It was a variety. But you see, at that time, administrators did not rank very well at all in the region. And some of the categories, coordinators and assistants, ranked okay. And since we did the fix, that's the next slide, we have moved up some. Now we're 5th out of 8. In most categories, coordinators are 4 out of 8. And in this category, again, that's the middle. And I do understand, even with the fix, we have principals who may be getting $20,000 less than some of their neighbors. We have directors who are getting $30,000 less. So these people who are over them are making significant money more, but they are in the larger divisions. And when you do accept a job here, just like any of the categories, you know we're smaller. And even though you wear many hats and do most of the work, you accept that. So we are in the middle now with their pay and comfortable where those starting salaries are. So basically, to sum it up, we are near the middle of the region after implementing this plan. But after looking, only after 2-3 years now, we do see bus drivers are behind. We do see IAs are behind. And I did want to note there was concerns about IAs, why are they leaving? So Cheryl did that research. And so you see on there the reasons that the IAs were leaving this year. Of the ones who gave the reasons, 3 were retirements, 2 were personal health / COVID issues. 1 got a teaching job, so they obviously were trying to get a teaching job. 1 just chose to stay at home and had to work with their children now because of the pandemic, virtual learning. 1 moved out of state, 1 was medical, non-COVID, and 1 did not like that we had to transfer because of the COVID. We have had to do a lot of transfers to fill in here and there, and sometimes that may add travel, or they may just not want to go to that building, and so that was a factor. But we have since hired 8 IAs.
And we still have some IAs positions that are available?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that mostly special education IAs, or?
We have filled those, so we feel good with that moving forward when we eventually can get back to 5 days. But we still have positions that they're driven by the numbers of this year, we really don't need this year, but we're not eliminating them from the budget, because when we come back, we'll need those positions.
Is there any way to offer special education training to some of the IAs we have? Because that's a good backup. Or do we already do that? We already do that?
Already do
We offer it for free for anybody who wants it? Any aides that, or assistants that want it? We offer that training? Sorry, I'm trying to utilize the people we have. I know, it's my habit.
I mean, every year the IAs do get training. I'm not sure exactly what type of training you're referring to.
Special education, I know that we have a higher need for IAs in that department, and they are harder to get. Are we training even our regular special ed instructional assistants to fill those roles if we needed to move them, like almost like a backup group for them?
The only assistants who are non-SPED are kindergarten IAs.
Okay.
All of our other IA positions are special education.
Okay, so we only have special ed IAs
Right,
unless it's a kindergarten position?
correct.
Okay.
So those IAs that we hired because of specific behaviors, they were still considered special education IAs?
You're right, you're correct. This year we did add those positions in.
And they're not
They are
considered?
not, but we are providing them with some training.
Okay,
Yes.
Right, because they do work with
yes.
a variety of
Some
students.
who may
Some
not
are,
yet.
that's right, hadn't been identified
Right.
yet.
Correct.
Right.
So you are correct. Those are not listed under that, but yes.
Okay.
So next was the new programming concerns, and I just wanted to point out that every year as we go through the budget, all budgets have priorities, and we're never able to fund all the requests. And this year, I did state earlier that the departments really did not request a lot because they did understand the pandemic and the unknowns. But in past budgets, you know, we've had requests of $5 million, and then we go through them with all of the staff, and we whittle it down to the superintendent's recommendations to you guys, and then we go through the process with you in a work session until we get to a budget. So knowing that, one of the things that even though you passed probably a year and a half ago was the alternating week program, we are not budgeting those. And when I say on hold, we probably need to say we cut those positions. So those positions are not in the budget. And because at this point, we still don't know what's going to happen. And to move forward with that is just too much of an unknown for us at this point. And the only other position on hold is the STEM teacher at Hardy. And again, when I say on hold, that never did get budgeted. And the reason behind that is we do not need that until we open that new school, and that's based on numbers. And I know some of the public has come and said there's an inequity with STEM, but really we are far ahead of not just our region, the state of Virginia. When we started our coding initiative and put a coding teacher, which is a STEM, in every single elementary school as a regular resource, there's very few that still do that. And then we said we wanted the maker spaces and the STEM teacher, and we did some more of those. And especially at Carrollton, because they have 7 classes per grade level. So to split those kids up 7 evenly classes in their resources, we need to add additional resources Because if you remember back a few years ago at Carrollton, we had like 38, 40 kids in art and music. It was unmanageable. They really weren't getting those areas. I mean, that's very hard for a teacher. And so that's why they were put in. So when Hardy increases in size, which it will, Hardy will become our largest elementary school. There will be a need for the coding, the STEM, and what they call a Carrollton is SOAR. And so that need will be there, but we don't recommend putting that need until that building is built. And so next I wanted to show you the new position requests that we're able to fund, which goes to, again, Vicky's comment means that these are in our budget and we still have that $500,000. So that is the Carrollton Reading Specialist. And that is not going to be grant funded. That's local. That was requested last year. That was number driven by our students. So that is in the budget moving forward as a regular position.
Yeah, because that was number driven before the pandemic.
Correct.
And
And
now
that
with
was-
the pandemic, you might even need an additional one with the grant.
Correct.
But you're saying that is one of the positions that was cut when we had to go through and
Yeah,
cut
that
them.
we held.
That's
Right,
what-
we held the
right,
money.
right.
But, right. So that will be in the budget moving forward, so they know it's not a 2-year thing for them.
I have a
And-
question, excuse me, Dr. Thornton. Do they have reading specialists in all of the elementary schools, especially like Hardy? I know this one would be going to Carrollton. Would that be an additional one in Carrollton?
There'll be additional one in Carrollton, and the others all have them. And
just have one.
Carrollton was actually short in the number they had per pupil, and that is why it was put in the budget.
Because I'm thinking with everything that's going on, the pandemic and all, and the students being out, there is a possibility we may have to consider putting monies aside if there's a need, especially when the students come back to school full-time for a position as reading, because we all as educators sitting here, going forward, it's going to be, the students are going to come back and they're going to need help in reading and math for sure.
Right. You want to speak to what we currently have?
Yes. So at all of our elementary schools, we have a reading specialist or a reading coach.
Okay.
Additionally, we have reading intervention teachers at our Title I schools.
Okay.
So Hardy, Carsville, and Windsor Elementary have additional teachers for reading intervention. Carrollton is not a Title I school, so they have the one reading specialist and they have one reading teacher. So their numbers are high. They have shown that their numbers are high. So this would be adding that additional teacher there. And it's not Title I, so it does have to come
Right.
from our funds.
Okay.
Right. But to your point, Ms. Tynes, if you look at the bottom of this slide where it says 3 reading and 4 math remediation, so there we are going to add an additional reading to the elementaries and a math. I think it was Ms. Euler brought up math, or Jackie, I think you have too in the past. And so those are the positions that we want to pay for through our CARES funding. And so that's why I put 7 grant-funded positions temporarily to catch up our children. We're not sure exactly what they're going to look like. They may be just a teacher who's an expert in that area. They may be highly trained aides in there. We're not sure how we're going to combat that, but what we wanted to do is make sure we had the funds to pay for those. And so you see some of the other requests. Windsor Elementary School has been asking for an environmental science resource for years. We have the greenhouse down there. Because of funding, we haven't funded it. So you could argue this is a new initiative, but numbers do drive it down there as well. If we added that STEM teacher to Hardy, our class size would be like 11 kids per class. It just doesn't drive it, but it does at Windsor. And so we are recommending, we have all the materials for that teacher, our greenhouse, we have our indoor things that we purchase, and so due to the revenue we're looking at, we feel that that can be funded. And then the Spanish teachers, those have been requests due to numbers at the 2 high schools. We feel like they're funded within this budget. And Windsor High School numbers again was a math teacher. Smithfield High School Social Studies, this year